Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Run. Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you. You know, we say that all the time, but you know what? We mean that we are going to have a great show for you today. And why are we going to have a great show? Because we have a subject, a very, 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 very important subject that as I'm speaking to you and playing with time, I'm trying to reach on my phone. But hey, Naboo, how you doing, my dear brother, engineer, and everything in between?
I'm excellent.
Hey, what are we doing? Are we having a great time or what?
Absolutely.
Are we going? Or I should say it this way: are we gonna have a great time?
We definitely are, and so we're definitely going to need you guys to call in.
Absolutely, so folks.
713-526-5738, 713-JAM-KPFT.
Hey, think about it. Where can you actually get a name like Jam KPFT?
You know,
I mean, we
were lucky.
We were lucky. I mean, we just went ahead and did it. Anyhow, folks, we're going to have a good show for you today. The title of the show today is actually interesting. We're in the progressive sphere now, and yesterday some great news came out, right? The polling, they did some polling, and there's a poll that had a 5% margin of error, but even with that 5% margin of error, it said quite a bit. And what did it really say? It said that, guess what, folks? There is a statistical tie in the race for the Democratic nomination between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who are at 20%, and also Biden, who is at 19%. Could that really be real? Is that really true? The truth of the matter is, yeah, that's real. I am pretty darn sure that's real, and that is something we've been talking to people about for a long time. Don't think that this race isn't going to come down to what people really start to believe, what people really want. I mean, eventually people were into this thing for fear, right? They were picking their candidates based on fear. Now they're not. They're starting to say, you know what? It seems already Donald Trump is self-destructing. Let's go ahead and pick somebody that's going to really do something for us. Anyhow, so the title of the show is Elizabeth Warren versus Bernie Sanders, approaching sooner than later. Subtitle is The Time is Approaching when many progressives are going to have to make a choice and unite to ensure an undeniable win at the Democratic Convention. Will it be Warren or Sanders? What do you think it's going to be, man?
I can't call it.
I can't call it either.
And to be honest, I really can't.
But you know what? I honestly think I'm calling the election already, though. I'm calling the election is going to be one of those two. In my humble opinion, I can't see anybody else getting the kind of traction that they already have.
It would be something. I mean, it would be such a surprise if somebody did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree.
I can't see it, Anyhow, folks, the choice of Warren or Sanders must be done strategically, right? As progressives get happy as Joe Biden begins his descent to a necessary irrelevance, if we are to move forward, there is still a dilemma that we will have to come to terms with, preferably sooner than later. Progressives have two solid candidates in Warren and Sanders, with overlapping bases that both support policies that will help all Americans. But only one can be president. How do we go about choosing which one? We discussed that today. This is a great problem to have. Suffice it to say, in my humble opinion, we do not need them both on the ticket. We need one navigating the Senate. So, I mean, look, let's be frank. Bernie Sanders started, first of all, let me take my host hat off. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate, official Bernie Sanders delegate in Philadelphia in 2016. So I've been on the Bernie Sanders bandwagon for a long time. And I tell you what, I am very, very impressed with all the steps that Elizabeth Warren is making. I got a little tweet, not a tweet, but I am from a friend yesterday, and because there's some news stories going around, they want to taint Elizabeth Warren a bit. They want to taint her with she's an establishment candidate, and she believes in capitalism, and she's just pressing capitalism and all that kind of stuff. So really, she can't be the standard bearer for the progressives. It has to be Bernie Sanders. So Bernie or bust is coming back again, and I keep telling people, hold your horses, hold your horses. Hold your horses. The most important thing for us right now is effectiveness. The most important thing for us right now is to be able to get something done and not to be 100% purist. But, before I get, do you agree with that?
Completely.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because, again, most of what we're doing, I mean, I sometimes I look at myself and I say, oh, I'm just an old fart, But what we're doing is we're fighting for those folks that, I hate to say it, but that we screwed. The millennials, the young Gen Xers. I like to call myself an old Gen Xer, but so the young Gen Xers and the millennials, we have to really get things done for. But anyhow, folks, look, before I get into the subject, I want to discuss some factionalization that I've been watching on Facebook. And this is serious. I really want you to listen to this. And folks, remember also this is a call-in show. I'm not having a blog of the week, so you can start calling fairly early. 713-526-5738, 713-526-5738. And here's what I really want to talk about. A friend of mine, I saw, two friends of mine, they were sort of having a mild discussion on Facebook. And evidently what we have is, a lot of Trumpsters that are flamers, that throw out bad stuff and they insult and they threaten and all of that on Facebook, right? And the first thing that people kind of want to do is say, I'm going to unfriend that person. I'm going to unfriend that Trumpist. I'm going to tell you something. I want to ask humbly that you unfriend nobody. I want to ask humbly that just stand back and consider, when you're talking to folks that don't agree with you, whatever you want about them, but don't lose the contact. Because what we're seeing with this factionalization is something the plutocracy wants. They want us to have such big splits between people that there is no way we can get together eventually and form a coalition and beat them. So the only way to prevent all of us from ever forming a coalition is to keep us separate. On Facebook, you're not my friend anymore. On Twitter, I am going to cut you off. I'm going to unfollow you. On all these different domains, on Instagram, I'm going to unfollow you because I don't like the way you think. And then it turns out, the funny thing about it is all of us have families that are liberal, some of them are conservative or whatever, and we just do not split. We have, no matter what you think, most of the things that we want, most of the things that we have in common supersedes what the plutocracy is having us fight about. This is hard to acknowledge when you're in the heat of the fight. When you're in the heat of the fight that we're having right now, it's very hard to acknowledge that. So what I'm going to ask everybody that can listen to my voice, whether you're in a truck right now just passing through Northeast Texas, Houston and the vicinity, and you happen to turn to KPFT and you're whether you're a Trump voter or a Trumpster who hates guys like me, who is a super left-wing liberal or whatever you want to call me, don't unfriend, don't turn the dial, don't do any of that. That's what the plutocracy needs you to do. They need you to have me as your enemy. They need you to have your relatives as your enemy. They need to have friends as enemies. Because if they don't have you talking among each other and strategizing what best to get what we need to get done, they win. Because then you don't see that the problem really is them. The problem isn't us. We all basically want the same thing. Take away the small social problems. We want the same thing. And the same thing applies to, here in my notes here, I put, let's not get into the Facebook silos, whatever. I want to say something about race as well. But before I get there, I want to talk about broadcast media versus internet. I'm honored to have a show on the air, KPFT 90.1 FM Houston, that's broadcasting throughout Southeast Texas. And of course, it's streamed on iTunes and all these other channels, TuneIn and all these other places. But I'm honored. But I want to say one thing. A lot of people think about the internet as the great equalizer, and I used to think that the internet is that I can go and become a broadcaster on the internet and I can do as I please on the internet because now I have independent, individual power. I am great now. We can do all of these things. I got some news for you folks. Broadcast airwaves is still and must continue to exist. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you what's happening, folks. And this is important. As I do more broadcasting over the internet, as I learn to reach more people over the internet, and now when I say I'm talking about all of us that do a lot of work on the internet, all of us that have become broadcasters on the internet, have created programs on the internet, have created followings on the internet. Let me tell you what has happened that's different from broadcast news. On a broadcast channel, a trucker going through Houston, a trucker going through anywhere, a person in their car with their FM radio, a person in their car with their HD radio can decide, I'm going to flip it out, I'm flipping through channels, and I find you. But when you are in control, when the internet controls the wires, what happens is this. I decide, the person who owns that channel, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, or anyone, they decide if they're going to put your node, your feed, if they're going to put Politics Done Right in that feed, if they're going to put Politics Done Right on that YouTube channel that you have access to, they have complete segmentation, factionalization. They can do it all. So broadcast radio, broadcast news, where once I said, and you've heard me say this before, the internet is a great equalizer. The internet is going to change things. The internet also has the potential to control. And you know what? Putting that back into the field where I spoke about don't unfriend your friend, don't unfriend people. Here is how factionalization works on the internet, on Facebook, etc. When you are sitting down in front of your computer with your feed, your reality becomes the people who think like you or the people who Facebook wants you to see or who Facebook wants to have control over you. And the same applies to any kind of media. Broadcast media, you're in control because you decide if you want to listen to Politics Done Right by flipping the channel and just turning it on. But when you're talking about the internet, where there is a one to many, and that one, in as much as we have one to many over the air, you can flip. On the internet, they can decide that your IP will not be serviced. They can decide that your IP, your particular node, will not be serviced. And that is full and total control. So that is something I wanted to mention. The last thing I wanted to come on before I really get to the core of the show is also race. Race. What do I want to tell you about that? I want to tell you, there's a lot of people really hitting other people up about, oh, you're a racist or you're a racist and all that kind of stuff. For those of us who understand that race is one of the most ridiculous, most ridiculous identifiers, don't fall into the trap just looking for everything to call somebody else a racist or looking for something to deny being a friend or whatever because this person has said something that has sounded a bit too racial for you or that you just think this person is insensitive or whatever. Because if you know deep in your core that race is a silly thing, that there's no race. There's a human race. All the other pigmentation and all those kinds of things have no real value. And that not only that, but that the racial divide came about by a plutocracy that first used it for economic reasons in slavery and for now other reasons to control your thought process. If you understand that, when you start playing the racial game as well, you are playing right into the hands of the plutocracy. So when I tell you, don't let differences of opinion cause you to unfriend your friend, don't let racial slips or racial statements or prejudice cause you to disconnect from other people. Don't do any of those things, because that is what the plutocracy needs to happen. The plutocracy needs you to hate. The plutocracy needs you to stay out of contact with others. The plutocracy needs you to have some wedge between others. Because if you are wedging, if you're fighting, if you have this between people, you are not looking at the genesis of our real problem. And the genesis of our real problem is corporate America. The genesis of our real problem is the plutocracy. The genesis of our real problem is the form of capitalism that we have been practicing that depends on keeping people apart, depends on control. As Dr. Richard Wolff would say, it's just the new form of slavery. The problem is most people now don't even know that they're enslaved. So we, over the period of time, we'll be discussing all these issues, but I'm asking you, just don't unfriend your friend. And just don't unfriend a person because they say something that hits your sensibilities, whether racial or otherwise. Communicate. Communicate. I can tell you the hearts of most people, and when I say heart, I know it's in the brain, but the hearts of most people are good. Most people in the world are good. And the bad people are those people who hoard. The bad people are those people who want everything for themselves. The bad people are selfish. I mean, you hear people talk a whole lot about, oh, greed is good. And most people are greedy. It's a lie. If most people were greedy, those people that are on top right now would never be able to accumulate what they have, because most people are greedy, aren't they? And if most people were greedy, could those people that are at top really be there if most people were greedy? So
Good point.
Don't fall for the crap. Most people are good. The evil people are the hoarders. The evil people are those who want everything for themselves. The evil people are the ones who say, no, I want this for me. And most Americans, most humans on this planet aren't just like that. They just want to be. They just want to live. They just want to be there. Anyhow, folks, before I get to the program, I want to remind all my listeners that KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, my favorites are Think Wing Radio with
Mike Honig on Mondays at 3 p.m.
Absolutely so. Open Journal with
Dwayne Bradley and the crew on Mondays at 6 p.m.
And of course, there's Jazz Latino Afro-Cuban Latin Jazz at its very best, hosted by
Juan Flores and Lupita on Tuesdays from noon to 2.
And after this is one of the best radio musical programs. It is a weekly radio program featuring an eclectic mix of Asian underground, Bagrab, Bollywood, funk, Hindi, Rai, where ancient sounds meet future beats. And who's that again?
That's with me, Naboo, Yogi, Al Triple X, and the rest of the crew, and that's directly after the show.
And folks, check out our full schedule at kpft.org, where you can find programming from music to politics to medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is a listener-supported public community radio station, so please remember that if you like what you hear, visit kpft.org and ensure that we remain a strong, viable community radio station that provides news programming and information not influenced by whom again?
The corporatocracy.
And we know what the corporatocracy needs to happen. We know what the corporatocracy must do. The corporatocracy must create division. It must make sure that we are all fighting each other, so we're not fighting against them, the ones who rip us off, the ones who have taken our worth, the ones who have given us pittance back for what we provide. 713 I'm taking calls now. 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. And we'll talk about Bernie and Elizabeth as I take the calls, because I also want to hear your opinions. But I'm going to give a preamble after I speak to Paul. Paul, come on in, my friend.
Hello. How you guys doing today?
We are doing fine, Brother Paul. Talk to me.
Oh, it's a great day in the neighborhood. Whatever neighborhood you're in, there's I listen to Bernie. I listen to
Elizabeth.
Yes, and in my humble opinion, I hope that the Democratic candidate will move toward the center, because I believe that what we are fighting against, what really insults us, are the extremes that the Republicans seems to present. Okay, and we don't want to do that. We can't embrace the poor and ignore the wealthy. Just like the poor, the wealthy can't embrace each other and ignore the poor.
Right.
There's got to be, because the majority, that we got to think about the majority. The majority is some of everybody. Because let's say Elizabeth wins, okay, she's going to have Republicans she's going to have Republican people to represent. What we don't like about this current administration, they try to ignore the Democrats. Well, we'll be just like them if we do the same thing. We have to have, whoever it is, will be the father or mother of the country.
Amen.
If it's Elizabeth, she's the mother of the country, okay? And when you have kids, you are the mother and the father of all your children. So they will be the mother or father of the whole country, the gays, the straights, the rich, the poor, the black, the white, the wealthy, and everybody else. So I would hope that they move toward the center so that they can be more inclusive. Otherwise, we'll be just like the Republicans, trying to embrace the poor and ignore the wealthy. Well, we can't ignore the wealthy because this country moves on money. Capitalism is here to stay. It's what makes this country great, however you define great. If no money moves, then everybody starves.
Right.
The economy runs on people spending. What I don't like about the Democratic Party, they propose programs instead of jobs. We can't begrudge the wealthy. People need jobs. They don't need food stamps and crazy checks, disability checks. People need to be able to work. I do appreciate that Trump has tried to lift the stigma of felony on so many people so that they can actually go to work. And we do know how they created the jobs. They didn't do it with a tax cut. They sent the tax cut to foreign banks overseas. They used the reserves they already had, about $3 trillion, to create the jobs. Okay, so we already understand what they really did.
Sir,
okay?
Paul, let me interrupt you a second, okay? Because you've covered a whole lot, and I want to cover some of what you said, okay? First of all, I wish you had listened to my daily show yesterday, because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote a tweet that I made a show around her tweet. And the tweet said, "This is what they call the radical left." I call her, one of the callers just got dropped. Just call back again and we'll pick you up. Anyhow, she said this is what they call the radical left. And the radical, when she said the radical left, she pointed out all the things that she wants and that Bernie wants, that Elizabeth wants. And somehow they call that radical left, right? And I don't know if you were listening to, so I wish you had listened to that show, because I went over a whole lot of that. I don't believe in this center thing that you're talking about. And let me tell you why. Because if I interrogate you right now, I'm going to show that based on what you're calling the center, you are actually more on my side than you are on this thing that I call the mythical center. And here's what I'm explaining. And before, I don't want to put anything in your mouth. What do you call center?
Center is, I believe, what we would call a moderate or a conservative Democrat. And we can't let the word conservative be such a bitter word, because conservative means that we also hold on. Not only do we open things
Paul, wait,
up,
hold on a second. I don't want to
those things that
brother,
are vital.
Brother, what I'm trying to do is get away from labels now. The reason I asked you what you call center, I wanted you to tell me what are your wants. and what make a person want, not center. Because again, when we get into labels, we get into trouble, right? I tell you what, let me take it over here and say this and ask you this. Do you believe that we can afford health care for every single American?
Well, that's a loaded. I think that's
no, it's not loaded.
Question.
No, it's not.
Well, wait a minute. Let me respond.
Yeah.
I think that's a loaded question you're asking me because if it's health care for everyone, the question gets to be, how do we pay it? How do we finance it? How do we rein in pharmaceuticals? How do we rein in doctors and medical corporations? There's got to be some answers to those questions that naturally follow.
Yes.
Medicare for everybody.
And
it has to be paid for.
Yes.
So that when they say let's do it, okay, they need to also include how do we pay for it?
Have you heard about how it's going to be paid for at all?
No.
I'm glad to hear that from you. You need to follow Politics Done Right more often. You really do. Because you know what I noticed on TV, and this is not your fault at all, sir. It's not your fault. But you're right. The powers, you hear me talk about plutocracy a whole lot of times. The powers don't want you to know that folks know exactly how to pay for this. And not only that, but it's cheaper than what we're doing right now. And you get more, it's cheaper. And you know why it's cheaper? Because for the system that we have today asks you to deny math. It asks you to say that somehow shareholders can sit down at their pools and earn money off of you paying premiums. And somehow it's going to be cheaper than having one payer pay all the bills. Let's not talk about pharmaceuticals or anything right now. Just paying the bill alone. Paying the bill alone is what insurance companies do. They do nothing more than pay a bill. Everything else they do is to corrupt the market. In other words, like they do things that we manage risk. Manage risk, you only have to manage risk if you're trying to exclude people so that you can make a profit off of their illness. That's the only reason to manage risk. So the first part of single payer Medicare for all is one payer. And why is one payer a good thing? Because you eliminate all these things. So there are documents that explain to you exactly how it is cheaper. The right-wing group that went ahead and did a test of Medicare for all versus the current private system, I don't remember the name of the group right now, came out saying that it costs several $1 trillion less than the current system that we have right now, $1 billion less than the system we have right now. But you don't hear that, Paul. You really don't.
I don't hear that from Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders.
No, actually, Bernie.
I don't hear the other side of the story from them, and I think they need to, they need to tell the whole truth about it, because most thinking people are going to pull the lever based on what appears to make sense.
Right, and what I'm saying,
maybe if they modify the narrative a little bit.
I am not.
Okay,
you're so right.
For all, but
you are so right.
This is how we can handle it.
They need
to include that.
Hey, you know what, Paul? That
Yes,
is what I am trying to do with my show. In other words, these things are out there. You're telling me that their narrative as it is today is not reaching you. Okay?
It doesn't include the message that you are espousing right now, or you are presenting. You're presenting the other side of the issue.
The facts.
And all I'm saying is where they get clipped is when they don't provide the other side of the issue, just like you, because no common sense person says, okay, Medicare for all. Okay, we just got a gigantic tax cut to the wealthy and a temporary tax cut to the middle class. Everybody wants their tax cut. So how are we going to pay for it? Through taxes, higher taxes? Nobody's excited about that.
And actually, here's
how do we cover it?
And here's the other thing, Paul, that they don't tell you. They fool you into, and Johnny, Scott, and Joe, I'm coming to you. Hang with me, but this part of the discussion with Paul, I think, is rather important from an educational point of view. Around. Here's the thing, Paul. The lie that they tell you, right, is that taxes are bad, right? In other words, the tax cut will always be more efficient for a market. That is only true for the persons like you and me, people that are not wealthy. If you give us a tax cut, we put that tax cut right away into the economy. In other words, it's spent and it's circulated. But when you give tax cuts to the wealthy, and that's what we just did, you give a huge tax cut to the wealthy, there is no additional spending because the wealthy never had a reason not to spend before. There's no addition, and people say, well, they're going to invest. If they're not going to invest, because for them to invest, you have to have a reason. Somebody has to want to buy something that investment is going to build. So
I understand. they have to need the money. The rich don't need the money. They don't have house notes, car notes. They
Right,
pay everything
but
cash. They're done.
And now what
They're
I'm saying,
already set.
but sir,
And
let me
many
finish.
of them said they didn't even want the tax cut
Right.
because it created an additional tax burden.
But here's what I'm saying. So the philosophy of the right is tax cuts at all costs, starve the government, little government. That is a philosophy. And what I'm saying is that philosophy only works for the wealthy. The reason Americans have been doing so poorly is because an economy that grows at 2%, while the wealthy grows at 7% and beyond, means that they're taking away from everybody else. And that is what we have to stop. So when you talk about, like earlier you said, oh, capitalism is the only way we're going to do it. No, capitalism as expressed by Bernie and Elizabeth isn't capitalism. It is something else. We may call it capitalism, but what they want to do is what I call free enterprise, meaning, brother, if you want to create a sandwich shop, if you want to create a machine tool shop, if you want to do all these things, you can do it and make your money. All of us pay our taxes, but we don't have the type of economy that we have today. We're completely extracts. I don't know if you heard my commentary on greed before. Most people are not greedy. Most people are good people. Most people are, and you are right when you say we have to. When I think a lot of people mistake something that you're saying, and I think you don't express it as good as you could. From the center, really meaning you want to be able to talk to everybody. That's what I think you mean. You want to be able to service everybody. And what I'm saying, the policies that are being defined right now as left-wing policies are policies that the vast majority of Americans want. And that is where I want to end the discussion with you, Paul. Let's keep. Let me tell you, you keep talking and you keep calling and listening. Okay, brother?
All righty.
Have a great day now. Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Scott, number 3. Come on in, Scott.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, if a Democrat is elected president, he or she will have to set priorities.
Right.
That's simply a fact. Democrats in general have a big agenda. For example, there was the book 52 Reasons to Vote for Hillary.
Right.
That's a big agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so very different from Elizabeth Warren's agenda or Bernie Sanders' agenda. They all have a big agenda. And I think it would take 40 years to get it accomplished. And that's only if the Republican Party goes into complete disrepute, or at least the GOP as it is today goes into complete disrepute.
Let me answer you, in an interesting way, Scott. And I hate to put it just this way. We cannot look. Dr. Richard Wolff came on my show a few times, and we went over economic numbers and that sort of stuff. We are at the latter stages of this type of economy before some major crash comes about. I know Don. I mean, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now. He has a show, Hartman. Hartman had a book, that he called about the crash of 2016. And I asked him, why did you call it 2016? Because we really don't know when that is happening. We know it's going to happen, but we don't know when. And he said, well, it was a bookseller who did the 2016. I guess that is sell more books when you do that. But here's the thing about it, Scott. Yeah, the agenda that Democrats have is very big. But you know what? As we go along, not completing them, it gets bigger. I don't think enough Americans understand the plight of many Americans because of how we live in this country. In this country, we suffer in silence. In this country, we don't know what's going on in our neighbor's home as we used to. And before, I remember when we lived in Panama, back home, everybody kind of know a little bit of everybody's businesses. So if X was having problems, you don't necessarily, you may carry some food over to X and you just help out X in the kind of way you help them with their kids and all of that. We don't have that in America. People just suffer in silence. They go till they get to the point of bankruptcy, they crash and they start. I mean, it's a different model of operation here, and we need to get around that. Now, the system is crashing, and the reason it's crashing is I always give an example where I says the total amount of spending one has, right, is the amount of credit you have plus whatever income you bring in, and after that you explode, and that's where we're at. You know?
I don't see it with the people that I know.
I know that. That's a point. You just made my point. You see, we live such an insular life right now that the people around, look, the subdivision that I live in, I see everybody looks like things are going fine. But you know, my daughter is in school, med school up in Washington, and she took a side job that she had to take, you know, raise some money, and she drove through Ohio, she drove through West Virginia, and all of that, and what she saw shocked her. Town after town after town that never makes it on the news, and you know, people want to know where that thing that Trump's base is coming from. Those people live in an alternate state of reality that think that the plight that they're in is caused by those of us that, like you, that just said, I didn't hear that. I never heard that. You know? And
well, I bought Paul Krugman's book, Conscience of a Liberal,
yes,
a few years ago.
Yes.
And I was impressed by it. And he says that government programs must be designed to please plenty of voters.
Yes.
I don't think Obamacare really made the grade. It's hard to say whether I have better hopes for Medicare for all, but and be sure. Let's see, college tuition. That could be a winner with a younger generation, but it would have to be done well. And one thing that does seem to be very urgent is the environment.
Right. Well, yeah, there are a lot.
People around me, people on Facebook, they say it is the most urgent issue. And there was an article in Time magazine that talked about it, and it said that
Scott, let me interrupt you because I'm getting some calls.
A president can really accomplish just one thing, and then the other problems are deferred to future administration.
Right. Let me tell you, and that's why we need transformational change. The reason we need transformational change is you just hit the nail on the thing. A Democrat can come in and do something, get eliminated by a Republican, and put things back. Look at what Trump has done. But
the voters put Republicans back in office in 2010.
Right.
And they put Republicans back in the Senate in 2014.
Right.
And you can't tell me that it wasn't their fault.
No, let me tell you what it was. Let me tell you what it was. It's because we live within rails. And I'm coming to you next, Ferris. It's because we live within rails. We have a Democratic Party that is not left enough, and a Republican. And when I say not left enough is people, we have stepped. We didn't have transformational change that people saw a difference. We have stepped.
I think the Democratic Party is more diverse than the Republican Party.
No, there's no doubt about that. But I tell you what, I'll pick that up in another conversation. But I got to go, Scott, and we'll talk later. Thank you so kindly for being a regular, my friend. You take care now. Okay, Ferris, come on in.
Okay, Egberto.
Yes.
I am calling because one of the things that I've noticed, and it's going to take a minute to say this. Okay, originally corporations said that if the unions don't give us a break, we're going to leave the country. So they left the country.
Right.
Then they come back and they said, hey, if you don't give us tax breaks, we're going to leave the country.
Right.
So they left the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're saying, give us those tax breaks, and we don't want to do anything for it. Because originally, taxes were designed, and they still are, for the money to circulate in society. In other words, you invest in Caterpillar, we'll give you a break. You increase the size of your business, we'll give you a break. You hire so many people, we give you a break. They say, we don't want to do any of that crap anymore. Just give us our tax breaks. And when you think about it, this country was founded on people that didn't want to pay taxes. Texas was fought a war because they were required to pay taxes because they were being loaned out or they were given land, and they didn't want to pay taxes. It is the foundation of how we have operated in this country for a long time.
Well,
it has always been taxes.
Let me tell you something, okay? You remember earlier, I don't know if you're listening to the conversation earlier, where I said most people are good people and we have a small amount of evil people, greedy people, hoarders. You're talking about the hoarders. Are these corporations who, yes, that's what they do. They, they borrow. Look, they cut taxes so that we have deficit spending, and then they lend us the money that they got back from the tax cuts that we then pay them an interest on. So I mean that's what it is. It's a robbery. It's a pilfer of the middle class. And when we talk about transformational change, that's what we're talking about. When you take a look at Bernie's policies and Elizabeth's policy, and by the way, the show today is about how are we going to decide for progressives whether it's going to be Bernie or Elizabeth. And I think one of the things that I wanted to say on the show is, first of all, we're not going to fight about it. We're going to look to see as we go along, in my opinion, that is, who seems to be the most electable based on what, we'll be able to see that. And that is what we're ultimately going to have to do. Look to see who, because the truth of the matter is there's not much difference between them. But one thing that I do know is that Elizabeth Warren has written out a lot of her plans with objective measures that can say this can be purchased or this can be done this way. 2% on wealth tax brings us, it shows you how wealthy this country is. 2% on wealth tax of 2%, which shouldn't bother the wealthy people because their wealth grows at more than 7% a year. A wealth tax at 2%, the amount of income it brings in to do good things for the country is amazing. When I talk about we have to have transformational change that people can feel immediately so that they continue to vote the people who gave them transformational change in, that is what we're talking about. Continue, Ferris.
In reference to Bernie or Sanders, I would definitely hands down say, not Bernie or Elizabeth.
Right.
I would definitely hands down say Elizabeth. Reason being is that Elizabeth is smart. She's already started putting out plans out there so we can already see which direction she wants to go.
Right.
And she's charismatic. In other words, we can get the smartest person in the world, and if they're dull and dry,
right.
they're not going to get people to the polls.
You know what? You're so right, Ferris. I tell you something because I heard Zerlina Maxwell. I've been watching. I've been really keeping tabs on Zerlina Maxwell recently. She's one of the pundits at MSNBC, and the reason why is that she has been coming out with such smart commentary, she says some things that it's like. Man, I've been saying that for a while. It's great to see a pundit say it. Yesterday she said, or a day or two ago, she said she loves both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, something to that effect. And they said the difference, though, is Bernie Sanders knows exactly what's wrong with the country, and he knows how to articulate it perfectly. And then he stops. She says, Elizabeth Warren knows how the problems of the country. She knows how to articulate it, and she doesn't stop. She tells you, and this is how we fix it. Now, there is something going on with Elizabeth now where people are starting to complain. Oh, she's talking to party leaders. She's talking to insiders now. To which I say, please do. Because the magical thing is, if you want to get in, you have to get in. So, anyhow, Ferris, thank you so kindly for your call.
Okay.
You have a wonderful day, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, come on in, Johnny.
Hey, a quick note. I didn't call for this, but you mentioned about Zerlina Maxwell and other people who criticize or offer their interpretation of Bernie Sanders versus Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. And my take, as you probably know, and I'll just remind you, is I think the best approach is for Bernie and Warren to join up forces under a Bernie/Warren 2020 ticket.
I've been beating that around. I honestly have been beating that around. And my thing is the following. Put it this way. I would love that ticket if it were a ticket that would really make it, if it's a ticket that would win, right? But my thing is that they could make such a caricature out of that I want, look, what you want is not always what you get or what you can attain. And I think as much as a lot of folks like you and I would want a ticket like that, I don't think it would be the best choice.
I disagree with you.
And that's fine.
Only.
Yeah, let me hear it.
The simple fact is, the last time around, they ignored Bernie through most of the primary. And then once we got into the general election, they started giving him some attention, but it was negative. It was demeaning. It was put down. They made up stuff at Saturday Night Live, even made stupid stuff up about him being an old man.
Yes,
it was ridiculous.
Yes,
there was
yes.
no substance
Yes.
attack on him, just like they did with candidate Barack Obama when he was senator running for the first time. No traction on Obama, so they made up stuff. They did the same thing to
Right.
Bernie. But when Bernie and Warren team up, they're like an unbeatable force. And Trump or any other dumbass Republican will not be able to argue anything on stage with them because they own the facts. In other words, as someone else has said, Bernie brings receipts. And guess what? I keep my receipts.
I like to hear that, Johnny. Well, Johnny, that one I think we're going to have to agree to disagree because I just know how in my humble opinion, how the plutocracy works, and I don't think I think I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Think about this: the debate stage. How did they do together when they didn't attack one another?
They did great.
They defended one another on the debate stage.
They did great. They did great.
That's right.
You know,
I rest my case.
Yeah.
But the real reason I call real quickly.
Yes.
Is one of your first callers, I believe, a black gentleman.
Yeah.
He brought up this idea about Trump removing the stigma for some folks. I guess he was referring to black people coming out of prison.
Right.
I guess by offering them pardons or whatever.
Right.
Okay, well, several years ago, Republicans up on a stage at some kind of town hall event of theirs, they were openly discussing amongst themselves in front of their audience about needing to own criminal justice reform, take it away from the Democrats and the liberals because the libs and the Democrats were making headway, and they needed to get ahead of that and own it instead of them.
Right.
For obvious reasons.
Right.
They even brought up, guess what? Michelle Alexander and her book, The New Jim Crow.
Right.
They cited her.
Right. Well, you know, I don't doubt that, but let me first tell you, Johnny.
The Republicans.
Johnny, let me stop you for a second, though.
For criminal justice reform, they haven't done anything yet, except for Trump pardoning a few people. Big deal.
Hey, Johnny, I want to correct you on one thing, okay? The first guy that you called, you said you think the guy was a black guy. I think you probably listened to his intonation and say, oh, maybe it's a black guy. I'm going to tell you something, okay? I do this show 5 days a week. I've stopped doing that because the other day a white guy called me and I'm talking to the guy and I'm assuming that he's a black guy, and I remember what it is that I said, and he said, "Oh, I'm white." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I mean, so I'm going to tell folks, everybody that's listening now, people don't know what you are based on your voice and I love that, right? That is so good.
Yeah, that does happen.
That is great.
I openly admit to that.
That is great because I tell you what's happening
it doesn't change the fact
I know.
that Republicans are trying to make headway.
Brother, I just wanted to hit you up to tell you, don't assume anybody's voice, brother. You have anything else you want to say, Johnny?
Don't do that.
Johnny,
I thought it was relevant considering the.
I know. I know.
Anyway.
Anything else, my brother?
Say again?
Is there anything else you want to tell me, my brother?
Yeah, on the last tail end of that last thought is the Republican agenda on criminal justice reform, deciding to move based on saving money. That's the argument they're going to use. They're not going to use it based on emotion or what's the right thing or the Christian thing.
Right.
And I think that's ironic. They're going to argue saving money because they're the ones who have pushed for privatizing prisons for their CEO Republican-friendly buddies.
Johnny, I got to let you go, man. But look, thank you so kindly.
The ironies are abundant, unending with the Republicans.
All right, buddy.
Do not vote Republican. That's my bottom line.
Have a good one, brother. Thank you so kindly for calling, listening, and all of that. You're one of our great regulars. Have a good one. All right, let's go to Joe. Come on in, Joe. Numero 4.
Hey, Berto. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
All right. So on the basic premise, I guess, being Sanders versus Warren. Right?
Yes.
So let me ask you this: Why? Why does it have to be one against the other?
Oh, what you mean? You mean they could be on the same ticket? Are you taking what,
Well,
John?
no, I mean, being on the same ticket, I think we can all agree would be the ideal. I mean, if you look at the combination of policy proposals that both campaigns have,
Yeah.
I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find anybody who comes even remotely close to
No,
matching that.
look, if you heard the discussion with Johnny and I'm not disagreeing with you at all. And I think...
No. I understand that you're not in disagreement, but
Yeah.
you position it in a way that it seems like, yes, in an ideal world, yes, if everything were fair and equitable, that would be the dream ticket, right?
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yes, it
but
would.
The question is it possible that what we're subscribing to when we make that assessment is the groupthink
Yes.
that we're getting sold every
Sir,
day by
Joe,
mainstream media?
Joe, you're right. I mean, I try like hell not to form a part of groupthink, but none of us are immune to groupthink.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem.
And
we're subjected to it. We're inundated with it.
and what? But one of the things that we have with a show like mine, right, is I may be group thinking right now that Bernie and Elizabeth is not feasible. I may be group thinking that. So here's your job. Your job is to make me not group think on that, right?
Right.
So there you go. Your job is to convince folks not to do that. But Joe, you have a lot of noise back there, so I'm going to let you go. Joe.
Yes, I'm here.
I got to let you go now. I hear a whole lot of noise back there, brother.
Yeah, I know where it's just being a working guy,
Well, you know what? And guess what, brother? That's what we do. We work. Have a good one, man.
Day in, day out, no matter what, that's all we do.
Thank you, sir. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, Mary, come on in, Mary.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been in love with Bernie, and I am all for Bernie, even though I would love to see Elizabeth, first woman president. I, too, in 2016, thought they got robbed, and it should have been Bernie for president and Elizabeth Warren VP.
That would have been great in 2016. Now, in 2020, I am telling people straight up, I am for Bernie and I am for Warren and I am for whichever one of them are going to ultimately make it based on how they perform and grab people into the domain. I remember personally, let me take my host hat off. I was actually a Bernie Sanders delegate in Philadelphia. So you know where I stand.
Yay.
Okay, but now let me tell you, I will just as well vote for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. Those are my two candidates, and taking my host hat off again. Those are my two candidates, and I right now there's no other candidates that have excited me for the election. I don't know about you.
Yes, either way around, whichever one it is, Elizabeth president, he VP, it works. I think it would be great.
Right.
And I think the people who are very quiet and not talking, not saying anything, I think they're there too. I listen to Free Speech TV, and when Tom Hartman or his people have a call in for, if we voted today, who would you vote for?
Right.
Almost 100% are Bernie.
Right. Well, let me tell you something, right? What I don't want to happen, and one of the reasons I wanted to have a show that talking about Bernie or Elizabeth, right? I just wanted to get one sentence out, Miriam. I wanted to say, folks, no matter which one it is, we don't want to have a Bernie or bust or Elizabeth or bust. We don't want to have that.
Absolutely. I agree.
What we want to do is, even for the die-hard Bernies, and let me tell you, I'm not into personalities, right? I didn't like Bernie because I just love Bernie as a cult. I love Bernie because what Bernie stands for. And if anybody else stands for that, I love them too. Because Bernie is not a same. Bernie can be a curmudgeon, I mean, he can be. you know what I'm talking about, okay? So
yes, it can.
So the truth of the matter is, I am just for somebody who's going to take the mantra and win. And Bernie, look, these guys don't need us coddling them. They're both, she's a big girl, he's a big boy. They can, whether they become the presidential candidate or not, they will be fine. But us, the American people, making a bad decision to fight among each other if our particular candidate, that is what's fatal. So my thing is always going to be, let's bring peace on these candidates. Now, it's, no matter what happens, and let's soften the blow for whoever's candidate is not going to be out there.
Absolutely no fighting. We just need to get a Democrat in the office.
Well, Mary, you hit the nail on the head. Thank you so kindly for calling, and you have a
welcome. Thank
wonderful
you.
day. All right?
You too.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Mike. Come on in, Mike.
Yeah, you had to come to me right after that woman made that comment, man, because, I'm going to be talking semantics just about every time I call in.
Well, let me hear your semantics.
God, and for her to sit there and say, we got to have a Democrat in there is one of the problems, man. Mm-hmm. We need a progressive in there. I don't care if they're Democrat or independent or whatever, but everybody's saying it's got to be Democrats. That's part of the two-party system that's pulling us apart. We need that third party, but semantics is the thing.
I know what you're saying.
Originally calling about.
Let me stop you.
The other side has corrupted our language, and language matters.
Yeah.
And conservatism isn't conservatism anymore, and liberal isn't an evil thing. But because they've turned those words into what they've turned them into, we can't talk in those terms anymore. So we need to start talking not liberal, progressive, not Democrat, but progressive. We need to talk about not conservatives, but assholes, because they're not conservative anymore. There's nothing about the people that are voting for Trump and voting with Trump that is conservative anymore, and it hasn't been for about 20 years.
Let me tell you, Mike, let me tell you, first of all, you're correct that what they're practicing isn't conservatism, and not only that, it is also correct that you can get to a whole lot of those people that believe it's conservatism and actually bring progressiveness to them and tell them what it means to them. That is one of the things that we do here. Try to tell people, what does progressive really mean? That's why I love...
What progressives really need to do at this point is get somebody out there who's likable. And we can't forget that, because if you sit down and you listen to all the different candidates on the left side, Bill de Blasio probably has the best plans, but he's so unlikable that nobody listens to him. But if you sit down and listen to what he has to say,
he's
good. A lot more grounded than people realize.
But I think Elizabeth is pretty close to de Blasio.
Yeah.
And not only that, but she's also
Bernie
very
and
likable.
Elizabeth are both likable.
Yes, and
but we can't forget that likability portion of the whole thing, because Dukakis could have been a great president.
Yes. Hey, I'm
coming
up.
Not likable.
Hey, look here, Mike. I'm coming up on time, and Nabu's looking at me.
Thank you. Great one.
You have a great one, my brother. Take care. Okay, folks. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. I'm just going to use these 15 minutes to tell you this. I wanted to talk about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, but from the point of view of the people calling in, and I think we kind of accomplished quite a bit about that. No fighting. None of that is necessary. Those are two great candidates. Whichever one appeals to the people the best should be the one who carries the progressive torch. Let's just remember that. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. It goes like this. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3.